Hello and welcome to this week's edition of SciChat. SciChat, of course, is two things all rolled into one. One is what you're listening to right now, which is a short recorded webinar about some marketing topic where I present some data about that topic. This week we're going to talk about visual content. And so we talk about whatever that topic is. I present data, hence the science part. But then the chat part of SciChat is actually a Facebook group. So if you're watching this on Facebook, awesome, you already know about the group. But if you're not watching this on Facebook, if you found it some other way, head on over to Facebook, search for SciChat, SciChat, and you'll find the Facebook group. You have to ask to join, and we do that so that we keep spam down and stuff like that. But basically, it's more than 1,000 scientifically minded marketers and communications professionals like myself and like probably yourself who are interested in applying this scientific method, interested in applying real data, facts, experimentation to marketing, to communications, and doing our job better through science. Okay. Now, as I said, this week's topic is, of course, visual content. And I like talking about visual content because I think it represents two important trends in social media. One is that the existing major social networks, so like Facebook and Twitter, are moving in or are already very social or very visual content focused, right? Facebook is basically a photo sharing site. It's the biggest photo sharing site on the web. When I go on Facebook, I see a lot of pictures. I see a lot of like funny memes and stuff, but then I see a lot of pictures of like my friend's dinner or my friend's kids or, different workouts that my friends have done in video, things like that. And then other existing networks like Twitter are building in more visual content, right? So they're building in more things to allow you to post images right into the feed. And then the other part of that trend is actually the newer social networks that are happening are things like Instagram, Pinterest, Snapchat, which are social networks designed entirely around the sharing of visual content. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to present some data. It's going to be a short talk, but I'm going to present some data about the way visual content works in social media. And of course, I do it through data because I call myself a social media scientist, and this is SciChat. And what I try to do with data is go unicorn hunting. Meaning I try to find the unicorns and rainbows, superstitions and myths about how the marketing works online and try to dispel them with real data and facts. And that's really the core of scientific marketing, right? Is to be led, not ruled, but led by qualitative and quantitative data. It is allowing us to experiment and to move logically through variations to get to the best possible outcome in our marketing. But to do that effectively, especially in organizations where there's more than one person has to say about how marketing works, we need to do a lot of superstition hunting, unicorn hunting, myth busting, as you will. Because there are going to be a lot of folks, both inside of marketing and outside of marketing, that have these well-held, strongly held beliefs about how marketing should work, how it does work, and what's good and what's bad. And the correct antidote to that is, of course, data. And so that's what we do here at SciChat. So the first bit of data I got here is from Facebook. And what I did in Facebook is I looked at the top 10,000 most liked Facebook pages, looked at all the posts on all those pages' walls, and what I found was that there are, and then I looked at the number of, or the type of post, that those were photos, status, and stuff like that, and I compared that to the like rate. And so what the like rate is, if I looked at a specific post on the wall, I took the number of likes on that specific post, divided it by the total number of fans, the likes of the total page, right? So to come up with a percentage of total fans that liked a specific thing. And what you find is that when you categorize the post types that are available, there's 4 common post types: photo, status, video, and link. You get photo as the most liked status type. Now, I'm not saying that you should only ever post photos, but what this does tell you is that if you're not doing a lot of photos on Facebook, you really need to experiment with it. Because as I said, Facebook is a photo sharing website. Or at least that's one of its major functionalities, right? And if you think about how you use Facebook as a normal person, like if you take off your business hat and you put on your normal person hat, It's a lot of photos. I share a lot of photos on Facebook. My friends share a lot of photos on Facebook, and that's really what we're doing on Facebook is we're sharing photos. So if you're doing, business marketing on Facebook and you're not doing a lot with photos, definitely experiment with it. And if you are using photos, experiment with different types of photos. So if you're not doing memes, experiment with some of those. Don't only do them, but certainly experiment with them and see how they do with you for you. And then on Twitter, I have some newer data about this, but we're going to make this one quick because the next point that I want to make I think is the most important. But just to cover our bases with Twitter, what we find here is that when we look at profile photos, right? If we look at accounts that have profile photos and accounts that don't have profile photos, it's kind of a dull point, but it leads us to something very important. Accounts that have profile photos, that's a little, 48 pixel by 48 pixel little avatar type image, have a lot more followers than accounts that don't have those things. Now, that's really, it's pretty duh, right? If you guess, if I ask you the question, do accounts that have profile photos have more followers or less followers than the average? And you would say they would have more. And you'd be right. But what I think this leads us to is there is an useful analogy between social media and the real world. And it is in that analogy that we can find the importance of visual content. If you're at a cocktail party, or if you're at a party, not necessarily work related, but you're at a party, and somebody walks in and they've got a brown paper bag in their head, you're not going to talk to, you would talk to that person because you'd be like, why do you got a brown paper bag in your head? But you're much more likely to be interested in what somebody has to say, to be able to gather nonverbal information about that person based on what they look like. Seeing people and seeing things in the real world is very important to us, right? We're mostly visual creatures. And so it makes sense that as the technology evolves and as the social platforms evolve, that visual content is a very natural part of that evolution. For the most part, most behaviors in social media are real similar or have real similar counterparts in the real world, and visual content is just one example of that. So if you're thinking to yourself, why do I need to use visual content on social media? It's on computers, you can just type. Think about how visual content helps in the real world and start to apply that to social media. Now, Instagram, I think, is one of the most interesting examples of this visual content setup, right? The visual content trend in social media, because it reaches. I live in Las Vegas, and I don't surround myself generally, like most of my friends are friends that I've made at the gym since I've moved here, and I don't surround myself too much with super tech savvy, like super nerdy people. They're savvy, but they're not like nerdy like I am, like as most of probably you guys are, as far as being interested in social media just because it's social media. So when I find that a bunch of people that I know outside of my professional life are interested in a new social network, that social network has something to it, right? There's some sort of mainstream appeal, and so that's when I get really interested in it. So Instagram, really early on, had that mainstream appeal, right? I've introduced people to it who aren't necessarily nerdy, and they've loved it, they've fallen in love with it, they've started using it. And then I've just seen non-nerdy people using it, and that tells me that there's something. Maybe that platform won't be the one that wins in the end, but it tells me that function is important and is valuable to real people, right? Not just social media dorks. And I had been on Facebook or on Instagram for an embarrassingly long time before I realized the lesson that this graph in front of us right now is telling us. When you use hashtags on Instagram, you get a lot more likes. So what I did here is I did a like to follower ratio. So that's the number of likes on a specific photo divided by the number of followers of the person who posted the photo has. Right? And then I determined, and then I looked at whether or not the photo had a hashtag on it. And what I found was the images that do have hashtags with them tend to have more likes, or tend to have a higher like to follower ratio. That is because of the way that exploration works on Instagram. So if I'm on Instagram and I'm following a bunch of people, I'm going to see basically everything they post. Because with Instagram, you don't typically have the same sort of follower volume or even Facebook friend volume that you would have in those networks, where I don't see everything that all the people I follow on Twitter tweet, right? Because I follow thousands of people there. I don't have 1,000 friends on Facebook, but I got a lot, and people are pretty, and it's sometimes to read through everything, and I follow brands and stuff, and so that gets cluttered. So I don't see everything that all of my Facebook friends post to Facebook. But Instagram, I follow a fewer number of people. I can scroll through it much quicker because it's just images or little images. I do it on my phone. It's really well optimized for scrolling and all that. And so I do tend to see a pretty high percentage of the stuff that my friends post. So that's where a lot of your likes are going to come from. But when you go beyond that is when Instagram becomes really powerful for like marketing, right? Because you can build reach on Instagram. And one of the ways you do that is with hashtags. Because if I'm interested in like I say I'm interested in lifting weights, I'll go to hashtag lifting or something like that. Or if I'm interested in cooking, I'll go to hashtag cooking or hashtag food porn or something along those lines. And I'll look at pictures that people have posted that I don't know those people, but they posted interesting images, and then I may like the image, I may follow them if it's interesting. But it is hashtags that allow you to build your reach in Instagram, right? So you can reach the people that you already have with just images, but when you add hashtags, that's when you can get outside and get new followers and new likes from people that don't necessarily already know you. So the question then becomes, what hashtag should I use? Which hashtag should I use? So this is the most liked hashtags on Instagram. These are hashtags that are correlated with the posts or the photos that they were on having a higher than average like to follower ratio. So this is not just the most common hashtags, right? These are the hashtags that when they occur on a photo, that photo has a much greater likelihood of having more than the average like to follower ratio. Okay. And what you find is at the top half of this list is basically reciprocity indicating calls to action. So it's stuff like follow for follow, like for like F, like the number 4 like, or L4F, stuff like that. Basically, these are hashtags that indicate, hey, if you like my photo, then I'm going to go like one of your photos. Or hey, if you follow me, I'm going to go follow you back. So these are social calls to action. Right? And I preach about social calls to action all the time. These are just reciprocity indicating ones. These are ones just saying, hey, I'm asking you to do this for me, please, and in exchange, I'm going to do something for you. Now, they're not really topically relevant, so you can't really expect too much out of the relevance of the followers or the likes you're going to get with one of these hashtags. Now, if you have a really broad potential market, like if you're selling something that basically anybody on Instagram could use, or like a large percentage of people on Instagram could use, then these things could be pretty useful for you. They might also just be useful to experiment with, see how they work. It's not going to be the end of the world if you get a couple unrelated followers. That's not a huge deal. It's not a problem necessarily. But don't expect too much in terms of like real business value out of those hashtags. What is interesting though is if you look at the second half of the list, it's stuff like sky, nature, clouds, girls, sunset, sun, beautiful summer, boy. Now, I'm not telling you, based on this list, to use one of these hashtags because they're magical. What is magical is the behavior behind using that hashtag, right? Because if I'm using a hashtag like that, I'm indicating to anybody who doesn't know me, right, because that's what hashtags are for, I'm indicating to people who don't know me that they can get some kind of value out of seeing this image, right? Everybody can appreciate a good-looking sunset. Everybody can appreciate a nice summer day. Everybody can appreciate a beautiful cloud. There is nothing necessarily personal about these hashtags, right? So if I'm flipping through a bunch of hashtags and I see a hashtag that's like sunset, hey, I can appreciate a nice looking sunset. I don't need to know the person that took the photo. Right? That's interesting. Even if I don't know you. So what that tells you is not, as a marketer, is not necessarily use sunset and all that all the time, but think about hashtags that indicate a universal appeal, or maybe not universal because you do want to be topically relevant, but appeal that does not require somebody to be already familiar with either you personally or your brand, right? So if at HubSpot we did hashtag HubSpotting or hashtag HubSpotty, right, we would get some attention from folks who know what HubSpotty and HubSpotting whatever means, right? But if you're not familiar with us, that's not going to do a whole lot for you. But if we do hashtag ROI, right, that indicates that you don't have to know who I am, you don't have to know what we are already to get value out of that, right? And so those are the hashtags that are going to do the best for you. Because on the flip side of that coin, when you look at the least liked Instagram hashtags, these are like the exact opposite of that thing. For instance, hashtag drunk, okay? Just imagine in your head what hashtag drunk, what the feed for hashtag drunk looks like what the collection of images, the people that have tagged hashtag drunk on look like. There is nothing interesting, generally speaking, nothing interesting in those images unless I know you personally, right? And even if I know you personally, it's got to be pretty awesome for it to be really all that interesting, right? Or hashtag best friends. Hashtag love them, love you, love her, love him, love her, whatever. Right? If I don't know you and your best friend, hashtag best friend doesn't tell me there's any value that I'm going to get out of it. There's no universal appeal there. Hashtag them or love them. If I don't know you and I don't know them, Why would I want to look at your image, right? So those are the hashtags that indicate that we're literally the exact opposite. There is no universal appeal to the image behind this hashtag. And so there's no reason for me to go click the hashtag to look at the image because I'm not going to get any value out of it anyways, right? So when you're using hashtags on Instagram, which you definitely should do if you're using Instagram, think about how you can indicate a broad appeal, right? Or appeal that doesn't require you to be personally familiar with either the person posting it or the brand posting it, right? Because that's what you're using hashtags for on Instagram, is to reach beyond just your established follower base and to reach beyond people who already know you into people who don't already know you. And you have to use some sort of universal appeal to do that. So that is this week's episode. Again, I started experimenting last week with the length of the episodes, so give me some feedback if you like this length a little bit better. This is about half the length we used to do. It's a little bit longer than it was last week. And we'll keep going. We'll keep making it better for everybody. Thanks, everybody, for listening this week. I look forward to talking to you in the Facebook group. Hopefully we can have some great discussion about visual content. Thanks again, and please tune in next week.